Sometimes it's like those stories that are right there in front of you, but you'd never expect them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of what we're getting into today.
Okay.
Like, just think about those late night grocery store runs.
Hmm.
It's 2017,
Yeah.
small town Pennsylvania. There's this young guy, Randy Stair, just working his night shift like it's any other day.
Hmm.
But there's this whole other thing going on underneath, something he was building online.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's filled with all these dark fantasies and plans, like really disturbing stuff.
That's what always gets me. It's that contrast.
Yeah,
Like on the surface, totally normal.
totally.
But then online, this whole other world.
Exactly.
And it's not just like a few posts or something. This was deep.
Yeah.
Videos, animations, journals,
It's massive.
all this stuff that basically, in hindsight, you can see it pointing to this awful act of violence.
And that's what we're going to try and unpack, like what led to all this? How does mental health play into it? The whole online identity thing and how powerful these dark narrative can be.
It's a lot to untangle.
Oh, for sure.
And it's important to remember, we're not just looking at one event.
Right.
This was a process, long and complicated.
So let's go back, way back to when Randy was a kid.
Okay.
Quiet, loved animation, found an outlet online like a lot of kids do these days, right?
Seems pretty typical, especially as they grow up in this digital world.
Totally. But I think it's important to look at how even those normal things can lead to isolation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, online spaces connect you, but they can also take you away from real life.
100%.
And with Randy, we see that isolation get worse because he's super into this one online community all about this cartoon character, Ember McLean.
Amber McLean, right, from Danny Phantom.
Yeah, had to do my cartoon homework for this one.
Way too.
But think about it. Tons of people love fictional characters.
Yeah.
But for Randy, Ember became like an obsession, almost.
Almost like an escape.
Exactly, from a reality he just couldn't deal with.
And it's that escape, right, that takes this dark turn.
Yeah.
Because Randy creates Andrew Blaze, basically his alter ego, modeled after Ember.
Wow.
And this whole blurring of online and offline identity.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of these kinds of cases. You see people struggling, especially with mental health, getting so wrapped up in these online personas.
It's like they become someone else.
It really is. There are even psychological terms for it, like dissociation or maladaptive daydreaming.
So it's like Randy's living this double life,
Yeah.
the quiet worker by day,
Right.
and then Andrew Blaze, this vengeful ghost leader online.
And that's where Ember's Ghost Squad comes in, EGS.
Right, his animated series, starting out as this creative outlet, but then it just goes downhill, becomes this reflection of all his inner turmoil.
The EGS series, it's a perfect example of how someone's creative stuff
Yeah.
can be like a window into their mental state.
Oh.
And the stuff Randy was putting in his animations, revenge, violence, obsessing over the afterlife,
Oh, yeah.
those were red flags, even though it was all wrapped up in this fictional story.
It's like his real life was making his online world even darker.
Interesting way to put it.
His journals, too, you read them and it's clear he's miserable at work, feels trapped,
Stuck in a rut.
and he talks about his coworkers in such a weird way, calling them robots and zombies. Like he doesn't even see them as people.
That's dehumanizing, for sure.
Totally.
So you have this trapped feeling,
Yeah.
powerless in his everyday life, but then online,
Yeah.
he's in total control.
It's like his online world was his way of coping.
A coping mechanism, but in a really unhealthy way.
Definitely.
And that's what starts to get really scary, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just escaping anymore, it's planning
He's planning his way out.
out of the reality he hates.
And it's not just thinking about it. It's journals. It's videos of him practicing at the store.
Yeah, it's chilling. It really makes you think, because it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing.
Not all.
It was all planned out, connected to his online world,
Yeah.
Andrew Blaze.
It's like he was becoming that character.
This wasn't just a snap decision. It was this descent into darkness, all fueled by his mental health, a messed up sense of who he was, and this fascination with violence.
Yeah. And then June 8th, 2017, it all came to a head. He shows up for his shift, but he's got 2 shotguns with him.
Oh my God.
Barricades the exits, traps his coworkers inside.
This is awful.
And then he just starts shooting.
I can't even imagine.
3 people died that night, just innocent people caught up in his plan.
It's heartbreaking.
And after everything, investigators find one last piece of the puzzle, Randy's goodbye.
His goodbye.
Yeah, he left videos and recordings, and it's this weird mix of being sorry and thinking he's justified. Like,
Wow.
he's sad about what he's gonna do.
Right.
But he also says it's his destiny, his only way to escape and, like, join Ember's ghost squad in the afterlife.
It's just,
Totally.
but it also gives us this glimpse into his head, right? How
Yeah.
detached from reality he was,
Hmm.
how much he wanted that fantasy world he built online,
Yeah.
and how much he believed he was Andrew Blaze.
And you can hear that online persona in the messages.
Like how?
He talks about ending the robot infestation.
Oh, wow.
Like, he was still using that dehumanizing language from his journals.
It's chilling.
It's like the line between online and real life just disappeared.
That's one of the things that's so unsettling about this case.
Totally.
How do we even begin to understand situations like this,
It's a tough question.
where someone's online world
Yeah.
becomes what they do offline?
Yeah, it's a question that's still with us as we try to figure out online identity and mental health.
It really is.
And it's not going away anytime soon.
Definitely not.
That's for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're in this hall of mirrors trying to figure out where the reflection ends and the real person begins.
Yeah.
Randy's case, it really shows us just how tough it is to understand how mental health plays out in this digital age. You know?
It's so easy to look back and be like, oh, the signs were all there.
Right, right.
But when you're in it, those signs are so small, so subtle, especially when they're mixed in with online personas and fictional stories and stuff.
Exactly. And that brings up a big question. Could anyone have stepped in? Friends, family, online communities, could they have seen how serious Randy's struggles were and done something?
It's a tough question. No easy answers.
No easy answers at all.
We talked about his isolation, but looking closer at his online activities shows he was looking for people to agree with his darkest fantasies, to tell him it was okay.
Like he was seeking validation?
Yeah, like in one forum post, he actually writes, I just want someone to tell me it's okay to do what I'm planning.
Wow.
That's not just a cry for help. It's him trying to make his violent thoughts seem normal.
That's a scary thought, and it really shows how dangerous those echo chambers online can be. When you're surrounded by people who think the same way, especially in these fringe communities, it can twist your sense of reality.
It's like they reinforce each other's worst ideas.
And it might even push them to actually act on those impulses.
And then you've got the massive size of online platforms, the sheer amount of content being created every second.
It's overwhelming.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack, trying to pick out the people who are really at risk from all the noise.
It's a huge challenge, no doubt.
Huge.
But one we can't ignore. We got to figure out how to balance freedom of expression with keeping people safe from themselves and others.
It's a tough line to walk.
It is. It really is.
And then there's the whole issue of dark content online.
Right, right.
Randy was drawn to that stuff. Violence, revenge fantasies, death, filled his online world.
Mm-hmm.
But is it fair to say that consuming dark content leads to violent actions? Like, is there a direct connection?
That comes up a lot in these cases.
Yeah.
But it's almost never that simple.
Right.
Millions of people engage with dark content.
Yeah.
And they never hurt anyone.
Makes sense.
It's all about context. You got to look at the individual, their mental state, their social life, how they're engaging with that content.
So instead of asking if dark content causes violence, maybe we should be asking how Randy's use of it was different and
Right.
what that tells us about his path towards violence.
Right. For example, some people watch horror movies or play violent video games to blow off steam for fun.
Like a release.
Yeah. But for Randy, it wasn't just entertainment.
It was more than that.
It was fuel for his fantasies. It validated his darkest urges.
He wasn't just watching, he was absorbing it.
Exactly. Taking those themes and making them part of his own story.
Blurring that line between fiction and reality.
Exactly.
So after the shooting, the town of Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania was just devastated.
Small town, something like this is just unimaginable.
Completely unprecedented. And at first, everyone was so confused. Like,
Yeah.
why would Randy do this? No one could understand.
It's a natural reaction. You want to find an explanation, make sense of something senseless. Right.
But when mental health and online identity are so intertwined, the answers aren't easy to find.
Especially in a case like Randy's.
Right. And for the people of Tunkhannock, their search for answers took them to a place they never expected. Randy's computer.
It wasn't until investigators found all his online stuff, the videos, journals, animations, forum posts, that the pieces started to fit together.
Like they uncovered this whole secret world
Really?
that gave them some disturbing clues about his motivations, what was going on in his head. It's like opening a door into a dark room.
Yeah, finding Randy's online world was a turning point in the investigation.
Definitely.
It shifted the focus from what happened to why it happened.
It makes you think about the role of online platforms, how they can both enable these tragedies and maybe even help prevent them?
It's a tough question.
One of the first things that happened after the shooting was that Randy's content was taken down, wiped from the internet.
His YouTube, his social media, everything.
It makes sense that platforms would want to distance themselves from something so horrible, but it also raises some important questions.
For sure, taking down Randy's content, even if it was done with good intentions, also means erasing evidence.
Yeah.
It makes it harder to understand what led to his actions, to learn from this case.
It's a double-edged sword. You want to stop the spread of harmful content, but you also need to keep evidence that could help prevent something like this from happening again.
You're right.
And it's also about acknowledging that even the darkest parts of the internet are part of our story. Erasing them doesn't solve the problem.
It just hides it.
It makes it harder to study, to understand, and ultimately to address.
You're absolutely right.
It's like we've been looking into this digital abyss,
Yeah.
seeing the dark side of what people can be like online.
Randy's case, it really shows us how complicated things are.
Totally.
We can't just point fingers at violent video games or dark content and say that's the problem.
Right.
We have to consider mental health, online identity, how people interact with each other, all of it, to even start to make sense of these tragedies.
So if we zoom out a bit, what are the big takeaways from Randy's story? What can we actually learn from all this to maybe, hopefully, prevent something like this from happening again?
That's the question, isn't it?
It really is.
We can't bring back the victims, but we can try to build a world where people like Randy get the help they need before it turns violent.
You talked about warning signs before, things to watch for both online and offline.
Right.
For our listeners, especially those who have family or friends who spend a lot of time online, what should they be looking for?
It's not about becoming some kind of mental health expert overnight.
Right.
It's about noticing when someone's behavior changes, like really changes.
Okay, like what kinds of things?
If they're isolating themselves more,
Yeah.
if they're fixated on dark or violent stuff, if their online personality takes a sudden shift, or if they start talking about hurting themselves or others, those are serious red flags.
So basically, pay attention.
Be present, be observant, and trust your gut.
If something feels off, don't ignore it.
Exactly. Early intervention is key. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations. Reach out to professionals, counselors, online support groups. There's help out there.
We need to break down the stigma around mental health so people feel like they can ask for help.
Absolutely.
And speaking of help, we'll put links to some resources in the show notes for everyone.
That's a good idea. Knowledge is power. People need to know the warning signs and where to go for help.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into Randy Stair's story, we've covered a lot. His childhood, his spiral into darkness, that horrific night at the grocery store, and everything that came after.
It's been a heavy conversation.
For sure. What's the most important thing you take away from all of this? What do you hope listeners will really remember?
For me, it's the tragic reminder that every username, every profile picture, there's a real person behind it.
Yeah,
With real struggles, we can't forget that.
it's easy to forget sometimes.
The internet can connect us, but it can also isolate us, trap us in delusions, let dangerous ideas fester.
And that's what makes Randy's story so unsettling. It forces us to confront these truths about human nature, about the dark side of our online world.
It really does.
It's a story that sticks with you.
It stays with you for sure.
And it leaves us with this question.
Yeah.
Could it have ended differently for Randy? What responsibility do we all have as individuals, as a society, to recognize when someone is struggling and to step in, whether it's online or offline?
That's a tough question, a really important one.
We've spent a lot of time in the dark corners of the internet today, but we can't forget there's a brighter side too.
There is.
There are communities online focused on support, understanding, mental well-being.
We need more of those.
We do. We need to make the internet a place where people feel seen, heard, and supported.
Absolutely. We can't just passively consume content online. We have to be active in creating a digital world that's built on empathy, understanding, and mental well-being.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unsettling world of Randy Stair. It's a story that challenges us, makes us rethink our relationship with the online world.
It makes you think.
It does, and hopefully it inspires us all to be more aware, more compassionate, and more willing to support those around us.
It's been a tough conversation,
Yeah.
but a necessary one. Remember, you're not alone. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. There are resources. There is hope.
Thanks for listening, everyone, today.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.